Hey everyone, welcome back to Alps Mustang Garage. Today we're back working on the 66 Fastback. We're doing the 289 conversion from a 6-cylinder. So today's video is going to be all about assembling the steering. Now there's a lot of stuff in here that's not required when it comes to doing your steering, but we're kind of upgrading this entire car. So this video is going to be all about the Borgeson Power steering conversion. If you recall, when we were like disassembling the car in an earlier video, we already removed the steering column. Now when you do a Borgeson conversion, you have to cut off a section of this because you're going to have a steering gearbox, which is very similar to like a GM style or a later Mustang style when they eventually started doing the power steering that's integrated to the gearbox. So you're going to have a rag joint here, so you kind of have to have room for that, because the original design is just like a solid shaft that goes from the gearbox all the way through the tube and everything. So that's getting eliminated, and we marked the tube that's going to get cut, and we kind of put it at an angle just to kind of match the firewall side. That way it's a nice straight same angle as the firewall. So that's going to get cut, but we're going to go ahead and install the steering gearbox, and then the Pitman arm and the idler arm and the tie rods and all the sleeves and everything like that. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do when it comes to assembling the Borgeson conversion is we're going to go ahead and install the steering gearbox. Go ahead and pick that up, Justin.
All right.
Oh my gosh! Okay, the kit does come supplied with bolts. So the flat washers, we just took off the original steering gear and painted them because the kit only comes with a split washer. So we're gonna get our mounting hardware, and we're gonna throw our gearbox in place. So obviously it's gonna use the same mounting holes as before. We're just gonna get it in place there. See where that's coming through?
Yep, right into the correct spot.
Going right in?
Yep.
Wow, a blind dog finds a bone every now and then. Okay, once you kind of get your 3 bolts started, you do not want to just crank one down and then crank the next one down. It's gonna kind of like walk on you, or kind of like wobble over, if that makes sense. You want to kind of do in a sequence, like a little bit at a time, kind of like you're bolting on a wheel, but not exactly the same. So you just want to do just a little bit at a time here, and she should go on nice and even. So we made a pretty good mistake here, and you would think I would learn after installing several of these, but like your rag joint, you're gonna want to put your rag joint on your gearbox like before you install it. And furthermore, Borgeson wants you to kind of like mark where your rag joint is gonna go for like your set screws, and then kind of smooth it out and drill a little indent into the shaft. That way it's like a nice secure set for your set screw. So we're gonna do this with it in the car. It might be a little tricky, but luckily the engine's still out of the car. So okay, so we're gonna put our rag joint on. This only goes on one way because the shaft sizes are 2 different sizes. So the steering gearbox is gonna go in this end here. Now, with the gearbox installed, it is a very tight fit, so this is going to be a little tricky, and this is why you want to kind of, maybe install your gearbox with the rag joint already on. So now you can see your hole here for where your set screw goes. And what we want to do is just kind of mark it. We want to mark inside of there as to where we're gonna make a little modification for our set screw. Okay, so now we can pull that back out. Okay, so I know kind of maybe what you're thinking on these rag joints, but you would naturally kind of be inclined to put your set screw right in between this groove right here, okay? But Borgeson specifically states to not do that. So they want you to push the rag joint all the way down, as far down as it'll go, and then, you know, mark that location, and then we're gonna like make a smooth spot and a little indentation with a drill. This is challenging inside the car, so again, like, we should have done this outside of the car, but here we are, so we're gonna give it a go. Okay, so that's kind of after the modification right there, and that should allow that set screw to kind of just have a nice little landing platform to kind of sit in there and just kind of give you that added little insurance that that sucker is not going to go anywhere once she's locked down. So now the trick is to get this rag joint back in the exact same spot. Okay, turn it a little bit, if you can, other way, right there. Perfect. It may be hard to see on camera, but you can see that exact impression that I drilled right into the gearbox shaft. Okay, set screw goes in. And it's going to have a little lock nut on there. Okay, she's locked down. She ain't going nowhere. Okay, so you got your Borgeson gearbox mounted on, and now you have a Pitman arm that you're going to install, right? So, one thing to kind of point out, Borgeson makes a couple different gearboxes. They have a 1-inch sector shaft and a 1 1/8 inch sector shaft, and there's two different Pitman arms that you can get for that, okay? 65 and 6 Mustangs, you're going to be far better off to get the 1-inch sector shaft. That way you can kind of use all Mustang steering linkages from here on out, because if you get the bigger one, then you have to get a Borgeson drag link. And if you get the Borgeson drag link, then you have to get a 67 idler arm over here on this side, so it all kind of makes a domino effect. Okay, so with that being said, the box is in, and you want to set up your steering, right? So we're going to put this on just like that, right? Well, that would be kind of foolish. It has 4 different possibilities that this can install. So you can install it here, you can install it here, or there, right? It also has a huge range of motion. Okay, what you want to do is find the center position. This is what we refer to as like indexing your steering gearbox, okay? So what we want to do is push it all the way over to one side. We want to make a mark on your, oh yeah, here's a paint pen right here. We want to make a mark here on the steering column shaft. So we'll just kind of, you know, maybe mark it right there or so. This isn't going to be a perfect thing, but we want to kind of center it, okay? So as I turn this, I'm going to count how many total turns I'm going to get out of it, okay? So there's 1, 2, 3, about 3.5. Okay, so it's approximately 3.5. It's probably not exact, but it's about 3.5. So half of 3.5 is 1 3/4 or 1.75. So now we're going to turn this thing back and count about 1 3/4. So if we kind of move back, we're starting there. There's 1, and then 3/4 puts me about right there. Okay, so now that you've centered or indexed your steering gearbox, how does your Pitman arm go? Well, the good news is these are tapered. So if you try to put it on upside down, you like physically cannot do it. When you put it right side up, it kind of just slides into position. Now, referring back to earlier, it can go like this, but that is obviously not correct if you were to start your steering in the middle right here. Okay, this is going to point towards the front of the car, and it's going to slip in just like that. So that would be a correct install. The kit does come with a crush washer. I'm sorry, not a crush washer, split washer. And the correct torque on this is, what would you say, about 12 ugga-duggas or so. I highly recommend using your impact gun. This is a big sucker, 32 millimeter. And that's good. So let's go ahead and set up our tie rods, okay? So you have this particular setup, you have an outer and an inner, and then an adjustment sleeve, okay? Now when you're doing the Borgeson conversion, you want to get all manual steering stuff because there are different tie rods and different drag links for power steering, like factory power steering, okay? But if you're doing Borgeson power steering, you need to do manual steering, okay? And another thing in regards to converting from a 6-cylinder to a V8, they are different on a 6-cylinder to a V8. So make sure you get all the V8 stuff if you're doing what I'm doing. Okay. So there's a certain way I set these up, okay? Because I want my tie rods to be perfectly centered in the sleeve, right? The inner one is going to have a left-handed thread, okay? So we're going to just get like one thread on there, right? And then we're going to come to the outer and we're going to get one thread on there. And now that they're both started, you can tighten the sleeve like this and it will drag both of these in.
You should start with that much.
Okay, so before we like thread all that on, we're just gonna load the ends of these with anti-seize. I don't know if you've ever taken apart an old car with this style of, you know, adjuster sleeve, but over time, they are a bugger to get off because they just kind of rust out and they kind of grow together. So
your alignment guy will thank you.
Yeah, your alignment technician will thank you. Okay. Now that both ends are started, because you have a right hand thread and a left hand thread, you just tighten up the sleeve and it will pull both of these in nice and even until they meet in the middle, and then you know you're perfectly centered. So I just kind of like hold it like this, and you're just turning the sleeve. see how it just kind of pulls in the whole unit like that. Okay, so now that you've got it all the way in, like they actually like touch each other, and it's like virtually right in the middle, kind of where you want to like start these out at. I mean, obviously it's not going to stay there, but once you go up and install this into the car, then you will turn the adjustment sleeve until because this is what's responsible for your toe angle on your alignment, and so you know your wheel's going to be pointing like this, and like it's going to be towed in like crazy, but once you turn that adjustment sleeve, it's going to straighten it right out. Okay, working on the passenger side, these two holes right here and here are going to be for your idler arm. Now the V8s in 65 and 6 are going to be kind of a two-piece design. So we're going to just install the upper bracket mount for now. So we can just slide the holes in place just like that. And we can put your idler arm bracket there. A couple of nuts. Okay, now you actually have the idler arm, so it's going to slide on there. We've got a metal washer, another castle nut. Keep in mind, I'm not torquing anything down right now. I'm getting everything set up, and then we'll cotter pin, tighten stuff up, and cotter pin it. Okay, so that goes there, and we'll pivot once we get the drag link in. Okay, so now we have a drag link. These are different for a V8 from a 6-cylinder, so you get the manual steering V8 when doing a Borgeson. Okay, so we're going to install this. There is a rubber washer that goes there. This one goes up into the Pitman arm. Castle nut it. And then over here on the idler arm, this is why we like to leave things loose, because now you have to go on top of this one. Oh, not loose enough. It's okay. There you go. Prime example as to why you leave everything loose, just so you can move stuff around. Okay, so now you have your drag link installed. You can install both your tie rods that you just set up. Okay, so it is possible to install this like this, but that would be incorrect. Okay, the curved one is for the inner tie rod, and it's curved to go around this drag link here. So we're gonna install one into the drag link there, castle nut in, and then the other one is gonna go into the spindle. Just like that. Okay, so obviously the alignment is completely out of whack, but the important thing is that both of the tie rods are in with the same amount of threads. So from this position here, I think I misspoke earlier in the video, but with this synced all the way in like that, you probably can't tell very well, but it's towed out like crazy. So all you gotta do is turn your adjustment sleeve, and it's gonna push the spindle this way and thus turn the tire inward. So you can kind of like, you know, for alignment sakes, you can kind of just like roughly eyeball it and get it to the alignment shop to get fine-tuned. There's other methods to kind of get it really close, but never really get an alignment guy. We just get it close to the eye and then send it on a tow truck and get it dialed in. Okay, so then yeah, this is like the same thing for the other side. We're gonna come in here, install that, castle nut it, on a manual steering V8 setup. They are the same left to right as far as the parts go for the tie rods. So, but depending on what type of steering you're using, if you're not doing Borgeson, we are, it might be different, especially with different gears and stuff. Okay, so there's that. And we'll kind of turn that out at least a little bit. We'll be able to see it a little better once we have some wheels on this car. Turn this out a little bit and get it at least eyeball close. But you can see how it just pivots that whole steering knuckle.
That's pretty close right there.
Pretty close to the eye?
Yep.
Okay, so now that you have everything set up here, you can go ahead and tighten things down. There are torque specs on these. I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. I'm just kind of going down and cinching everything down for now. Then we'll put the torque wrench on it, but there's also a certain aspect of feel. Okay, these torque specs are kind of made back in the 60s. Different parts, and so it may not be exactly the same, but a certain element of paying attention to what you're doing, along with paying attention to just torque specs. So, okay, so I'm not going to video torquing down, but I'm just going to read off the book to you, the torque spec. So, your tie rods, in particular your outer tie rods, is going to be 30 to 40 foot-pounds, okay, by the book. Your idler arm bracket to the frame is going to be 28 to 35. Your idler arm to Pitman arm, idler arm to Pitman arm to idler rod. What the hell is that one?
That'd be the drag link.
Oh, yeah, they call it different names in the book. Okay, so your idler arm to the drag link is going to be 60 to 80. Your connecting rod or tie rod adjustment sleeve clamp, these little guys are 10 to 14, but I tend to just kind of tighten them until they just feel good, because you want to make sure that's going to be good and tight. It's going to like compress that sleeve to make sure that never moves. And then your Pitman arm to steering arm idler rod, this guy up here is going to be 30 to 40. That's going to be the same for your Pitman arm to the drag link, and then your tie rods are going to be the same as what I talked about over here. So, okay, so now that you've torqued, you can put your cotter pins in place. I like to bend one ear over and then kind of clip the ends. If you're not paying attention, those suckers, they will bite you. So another thing I wanted to talk about, for the sakes of paying attention and doing things right, your tie rod adjustment sleeves. Okay, it's slit right here because as you tighten those clamps, it's going to close together and grip those tie rods from turning, right? So if you put your little clamp up like this, it's going to put the majority of the force up here when it needs to be down here. You need to put your clamp down like this and then tighten it, or in relation to wherever the slit is. That's what's more important. You need to keep the bottom of the clamp with the slit in the sleeve. So wherever that ends up, that's where that clamp needs to go. Okay, so the next thing you probably want to do, which is not really necessary, but it's just helpful, is install your power steering hoses before your engine. So that is, of course, if you're working with an engine out like me. So you have two ports, one for a pressure line, one for a return line. The return line always is the one that's closest to the firewall on these Borgeson power steering gearboxes. So we'll put the return line and the pressure line there, and that way they're in and locked down, and we don't have to worry about that with the engine in. Okay, so how do you know which one of these is the pressure line and which one's the return line? Well, the return line always gets kind of clamped with just a generic hose clamp. Okay, a pressurized hose is always going to be crimped on both ends. So this is definitely the return, this is the pressure. Okay, so there's your rag joint, there's your hoses. We'll kind of tie these ones up out of the way, and then we'll kind of finalize that once we have the engine in. Then we can put the pump on and show you how all that goes. We'll put the steering column in after we put a new firewall pad on. Okay, we're back inside the car, finishing this Borgeson power steering conversion. So you have your tube here, okay? So the way the Borgeson is going to attach is you're going to have this like retainer plate, and it has like a couple, you know, little tabs like this and a band clamp. And so this retainer plate is going to screw into the firewall, and then you also have like a firewall seal that you're going to put on, retainer plate kind of cinched all down, and then the band clamp to kind of, you know, hold the column tube to the retainer plate. Okay, but you also have, you know, the steering shaft that has to go in there as well. So here's our shaft that's going to spline into the rag joint. So I think to make this as easy as possible, we're going to install the shaft in there first, lock it down, slide the column tube over that, and then secure it to the firewall. Okay, go ahead and install the shaft down into place, and then Justin from the outside is gonna lock that down with the little set screw. Okay, so there's the steering shaft on there. Now we just need to attach the column tube. Okay, so now we're just gonna slide our steering column tube with all of our stuff on it, just kind of down into place here. Just trying to get the seal down in place. Retainer plate has a flat section on it, and that is meant to go up. I should have had that turned before. Okay, so once you get kind of this point here, you're gonna fight that retainer plate that goes in the firewall. So what I typically would suggest is, you know, get it set up here so that way it kind of will hold itself in. So we need our bracket. We have an upper piece that goes, you know, up here, and it all kind of sandwiches the brake pedal support and everything in place. So that is going to go right there. And then your bottom bracket, which is here, has a little tang, and there's a slot in the bottom of the column for that. This is where it gets a little challenging, is getting it all up in there at the same time. So now you've fought in that for a good minute. Should be able to cinch those up. Now your column is like secured up here, and you can kind of focus on your firewall plate and your seal. Okay, so this was very challenging to film this and install this while laying down in here with a light and trying to do this. So I'm pretty sure you guys can figure out how to put screws in through a firewall. But this is kind of how, I'm just kind of show you how it lines up. Like there's a flat edge there, and there's a flat edge up on the top above the column, and it kind of has the rounded portion all around here. So so that kind of takes some figuring out to do. Now I just got to install my worm clamp around these little tabs. Okay, there's your clamp on. Tuck your insulation back in there like that. Okay, and that's that. Okay, so final stage of Borgeson conversion. You're just kind of finalizing the upper shaft here. So you have a little sleeve. This is a little bearing sleeve that goes down over, and it will ride on the steering column bearing itself. So we're gonna just kind of push that down into place, and then that will stabilize that shaft. Because without that in there, the shaft just kind of has play. So now that that's in there, you can add your spring and your steering wheel. Now I'm just kind of putting this on for now because I need to send this car to the exhaust shop. So I'm just going to kind of like put this on there loosely just to kind of get us there. So we've kind of fast forwarded in time a little bit. Where we left off was we installed the rag joint and the hoses, and now we have an engine. We have an engine in place. So it's been a little bit of time, but I've been filming this whole Borgeson video kind of out of sequence. So we have a bracket. You're gonna get a pump that looks like this with a bracket attached, some bolts and some spacers. Now you have a couple different options, okay? You can bolt this through the bottom and through this hole or this hole. And what it does is it changes the position of which you mount it. For example, if you're running air conditioner, you're gonna mount it so it tilts the pump like away, so you can still like access your fluid cap here and not be in the way of the compressor. Okay, but if you don't have a compressor, then you can mount it so it pivots up a little higher and it'll kind of stand up straight, and you can easily access it. So it does give you those two different mounting options. So one thing, we already kind of like mocked all this up. And one thing that we kind of discovered, we had to kind of make a little modification to our bracket. For some reason, the fuel pump that we're using actually made contact. Like I could, you know, tilt the bracket up, but then, you know, my pump is gonna make contact to my compressor. So if I rock it down, I was actually making contact to my fuel pump. So I've noticed, because we've done a few of these Borgeson conversions, I've noticed that most of the time they will clear the fuel pump, but this one for some reason is kind of interfering. So you might want to watch out for that if you're kind of experiencing this. So we just kind of took a notch out, and this is pretty heavy duty stuff, so I don't think we compromised anything. We just kind of notched it and repainted it. So there's a reason why I put that spacer on there, is because this bolt is too long, and I can use that spacer in the front of that to kind of take up that length. You could make your bolt shorter or go get a shorter bolt, but I don't think it looks too bad like that. Okay, so now you got your bracket on there nice and tight. Now you can attach your pump on here, and you just have the 2 bolts. Top bolt started. Now your bottom bolt will come with a spacer, okay? Because if you don't have the spacer, it's gonna like mount all crooked on the bracket. So we're gonna put the spacer down here on the bottom. And then the bolts. Okay, and then I'm just going to leave those loose for now so I can get a belt on there and adjust that and then tighten down my bolts. Okay, so now that you have like your pump kind of set up there, you know, it's still a little loose before we can get the belts on, but now we are going to install the hoses. So this lower one here with the threads, that's going to be your pressure hose. So we're just going to take the plug out of the bottom of the pump, and we're going to install the pressure hose. Okay, so I kind of like to leave that a little loose until you can get your return line in place. So get our return line in place here. Okay, and now you can kind of like, you know, kind of position your hoses where you want them, where it makes sense, and kind of lock them down, and then your hoses are all done. Okay, so now that you have your pump in place, you can put your belts on. More than likely, your pulley orientation is going to be different than what I have, which means your belts are going to be different than what I have. If you kind of like this setup, I can post links, you know, to stuff like this AC compressor bracketry and stuff, and you know, all the, you know, pulleys that I use. These are just, you know, ACP pulleys, 2 groove on the crank, 2 groove on the water pump. So the way I have set these up in the past is I just kind of have gone around my AC compressor and my alternator and my crankshafts, like for that one. And then for the Borgeson Power steering, I go around crank, water pump, and then the power steering pump. So now you can kind of swing this over like that, put some tension on it, lock it down, your belt will be tight, and then you can tighten down your bolts in the back and tighten down your hoses and kind of get it all squared away. I've put the car up on jack stands and got the front wheels off the ground, so that way I can fill my power steering reservoir here, which has a what they call a Saginaw power steering pump. So we can just kind of use like generic, just kind of power steering fluid, and that should work. Okay, so what we do on power steering systems is we like to fill the reservoir, and then we like to, you know, work the wheels back and forth and try to purge some of this fluid throughout this system. And furthermore, once we actually start the engine, we don't want the resistance of the weight of the car on the wheels, so when we do turn, it kind of like will be nice and easy on the system and kind of work any remaining air that's still in there, kind of work it out without having the stress of the weight of the car on the wheels. So okay, so it's important to not fill this to the brim, because as you work it, you know, the fluid will kind of like rise and fall a little bit as it like drops down. So you don't want to like make a huge mess, so like only fill the reservoir like maybe halfway or something. And then we can work the wheels just kind of back and forth. Watch our system here. And we'll do that several times until we feel like she's, you know, at least good enough to kind of have the engine take over on the pump. Okay, well, I think that's gonna kind of complete my Borgeson conversion video. So I probably won't do a startup on this until I'm like doing the actual, you know, first time startup on this whole engine and everything, because if you've been following this little project along, it's been a whole 289 conversion, and so we've done a lot of work on this. I used to have a little 6-cylinder in there, so we'll test out the steering system once we fire up the engine for the first time, but I still got a lot of work to do. Gotta send her to the exhaust shop, gotta get the interior back all in there and everything like that. But yeah, so if you found this video to be helpful, give us a thumbs up. If you want to follow us along, do subscribe to the channel. Those little things do go a long ways when it comes to helping us to make more videos which are helpful for you guys. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.